Uh,
Record.
Questions for me before we begin?
Do you want us to introduce yourself now or before it teaches?
Just as you begin your speech, yeah, untimed, of course.
Okay. Is everyone all set? Okay. So I guess as a brief roadmap before my time starts, hello, my name is Tanya Shah, and I am the Prime Minister on the government side. And yes, my time starts now. Hello, in this speech, I will begin by first stating our definitions and then our contentions, as well as our Wang mechanism. And with the time that I have left over, I'll just go straight into our contentions. For our definitions, we define this house as the American people, and we define Juul products as the ones that were banned by the FDA, which are the reusable e-cigarettes, the mainstay of Juul's sales. For our contentions, our first contention is that e-cigarettes help individuals quit smoking. Our second contention is that the FDA's decision does not address the primary proponent of teen vaping. And our third contention is that banning Juul products has given the false impression that we've addressed the issue of teen vaping. And for our Wang mechanism, we as the government side believe that whichever side wins this debate should prove what's best for the American people, a testimony to utilitarianism. Is that clear? Okay. I'll dive straight into our first contention about how e-cigarettes help individuals quit smoking. To understand why vaping is even a thing, we need to understand their fundamental purpose. And this purpose is that vaping helps smokers quit smoking. That is the essential reason behind e-cigarettes. Now, it is widely known that e-cigarette smokers actually are less likely to smoke real cigarettes, and how vaping is significantly less harmful than smoking. This is the main reason why vaping is marketed as a way to stop smoking. Additionally, it is known that vaping has fewer chemicals than regular smoking, and that combustible cigarettes have thousands of chemicals that are far more toxic. Additionally, numerous studies have shown that for both teens and adults, those who vape are able to easily prevent their smoking habits, and this has alleviated the effects of the addiction epidemic and the smoking epidemic. Now, additionally, although the known chronic effects of e-cigarettes are not very well widely spread, recent data has shown that they do work efficiently and that they are significantly better for you than actual smoking with cigarettes. Additionally, these same studies have shown that those who vape are less likely to actually smoke, and that vaping is the best way to quit smoking effectively and efficiently. Additionally, when we consider e-cigarettes as a whole, they do have a net benefit because they help numerous individuals convert and stop the practice of smoking. Additionally, the reason why we need to regret the decision is because in banning these products, we're burying these people who could have had benefits from e-cigarettes, who could have quit their habits with smoking through vaping.
Eli?
Yes.
Are there other harmful e-cigarette brands or beneficial e-cigarette brands, as you guys put it, besides Juul?
It's important to note that in the FDA decision to ban Juul products, there were numerous other products that were banned that were part of that ban. And so although Juul products are the ones that are usually considered or kind of synonymous with e-cigarettes, it's worth noting that the FDA ban did include various other products that were, as stated in the definitions, reusable e-cigarettes. Now, onto our second contention about how the FDA's decision does not address the primary proponent of teen vaping. We need to understand that the Juul ban did result in the banning of reusable e-cigarettes. And the reason why this is problematic is because teens are more likely, according to numerous studies, to use disposable e-cigarettes. Now, because many of these companies and the ones that were banned do not make these disposable e-cigarettes, and although the United States has banned it, we are forgetting about the ones that are disposable and these e-cigarettes that these teens use. Now, additionally, the quitters, those individuals who want to quit smoking, they're the ones who use reusable e-cigarettes, not disposable e-cigarettes. And because the teens are more likely to use these disposable e-cigarettes, and because those were not the e-cigarettes that were banned by the FDA, we have not directly addressed the primary issue of teen vaping. Now, vaping e-cigarettes as a whole is something that does provide a net benefit. And the primary reason why people contend that e-cigarettes are bad for humans, bad for this country, is because they cause the teen vaping issue. Now, it is important that we treat these as two separate ideas, that teen vaping is one issue and vaping itself is another. And vaping by itself is inherently good, but when we think about teen vaping separately, that is what is bad. Now, if we were to solve the issue of teen vaping, we need to get down on those disposable e-cigarettes, not the reusable ones, which are the ones that are used by people who have smoked and who want to quit smoking. To actually solve the problem at hand, we need to ban the correct types of e-cigarettes. Now, the real reason why this is actually harmful ties into our third contention, which explains how, even though this does not solve the problem, there is actually an inherent harm in banning Juul products. And this inherent harm comes from the fact that we have given ourselves the false impression that we've addressed the issue of teen vaping when it still, in fact, persists. Teen vaping is a serious problem, and we've given it an ineffective solution, banning reusable e-cigarettes instead of the disposable e-cigarettes that teens are more likely to use. And because we've misaddressed the issue at hand, we have not solved it. The issue is teen vaping, and we need to get down on teen vaping. Teen vaping is separate than vaping, and that clarity must be expressed. We need to focus on enacting policies that mitigate teen vaping. And we need to understand that vaping has its benefits. These benefits, however, are exclusive. They are separate, and they should be considered separately from the issues that arise with teen vaping. To actually combat teen vaping, we must address it as its own problem, because the problem is not vaping, it is what happens when teens are irresponsibly using these e-cigarettes. Now, additionally, when we actually address the problem, when we realize that the problem is teenagers using these e-cigarettes when they should not be using these e-cigarettes, and individuals who have no desire to quit smoking or who never smoked in the past, when these individuals use e-cigarettes, this is the problem that we need to address. These are the individuals who should not be using e-cigarettes, and our policies must resemble something that combats this problem. Because when we mislabel the problem as vaping, we do not actually solve anything. And in being ineffective, we are making the problem worse. We're allowing the problem to continue to persist and to continue to have its negative benefit, its various detriments. So we need to understand that the main idea here is that teen vaping is the problem and not vaping itself. Thank you.
Okay, so if everybody is ready, the order is going to go their case, our case. Or sorry, definitions, their case, our case. Time.
Oh, introduction.
Oh yeah. Hi, I'm Zach Fleisler. I'm from Trinity, and I'll be the first speaker. Time will start now. Let's start off with their definitions. First, let's redefine this house as the FDA. There's one clear reason for this. The words regrets in the resolution is obviously like inherently a reflexive verb. To regret something means you have to regret something you yourself have done. So in order for this house to regret the ban, this house must also be the FDA. And because of that, let's change like the framework to like doing the right thing to fulfill the FDA's mandate and like to do the job of the FDA, which is to regulate food and drugs for the American consumer. With that in mind, let's get into our first. Let's like clear up one big thing. The op is not like a tirade against all e-cigarettes. We are just punishing one company, Juul, for their bad business practices. This is nothing about the total market. This is nothing about the concept of e-cigarettes. This is just about Juul's specific actions and things that Juul has done and why Juul should why the ban is definitely justified. Now, let's get into the first contention. They tell you that e-cigs help people stop smoking. We agree. This is entirely a non-unique argument because the op is not saying that we're banning e-cigarettes. We're just punishing Juul for bad business practices. They also tell you that this is so much better than actual smoking because it helps people stop smoking. But Juul, uniquely, actually, you can turn this because Juul brings more people into smoking as they expose a new audience to smoking that previously would not have. The United States was able to handle and deal with the problem of smoking very well over the last 30 years. While other countries have had their smoking rates increase, the United States have plummeted downwards. However, Juuling and other flavored fun e-cigarettes and other tobacco brands and other nicotine ways of ingesting it have become more popular with kids when smoking has not. This is a problem, But because of this, we're telling you to turn this because Juul actually causes more harm to the consumer, which is definitely the purpose of the FDA to stop that. On their C2, they say that it doesn't address the primary proponent of teen vaping. There's a few things to, first off, yes, it does, because by attacking Juul, who is only being punished because of their teen vaping problems, not because of like how dangerous or toxic it is. Remember, Juul lost lawsuits in 33 states, had to pay over $400 million in damages because of their marketing tactics, and they've basically already admitted guilt to this in marketing specifically to children. Thus, this is a greatly beneficial action for public health, specifically for public health of children, and does target part of the teen vaping pandemic. Furthermore, like they tell you that like kids are using disposables more. Not only do they not give you warranting as to why, they just kind of assert it. We would tell you the opposite. We would say that kids actually use reusable significantly more for a few reasons. First off, reusable are always going to be significantly cheaper, because if you think about it, buying just an extra supply when you already have like the actual physical vaporizer versus buying a new vaporizer every single time you're going to buy more nicotine. At the end of the day, it always makes sense for kids to have the first rather than the second, because it's more efficient for them who do not have a consistent source of income. Furthermore, we would tell you that it's easier to like share, mix and match with friends, and at the end of the day, like hide it, because you could take it apart, put it in different pieces and claim that it's something that it's not, which at the end of the day makes disposables less likely to buy for children, and obviously makes this even more topical about kids. Now on the C3, which make people think that they've solved the problem of teen smoking, no one thinks that. Not a single person in the entire country believes that by banning Juul, you are solving the problem of all teen smoking and all teen drug use and all teen nicotine usage. No one has ever believed that. This is all just about punishing one company for their bad business practices, which is what the job of the FDA is. At the end of the day, this is not a tirade against all people who want to use nicotine. As an adult, you're allowed to do whatever you want. That is one of the freedoms that you have in this country. But this is a tirade against people who use their freedom to hurt other people, to target their products at kids, and to potentially ruin lives. Now, let's get into our side of the flow. Let's start off on like our first contention. Our first contention is going to be on consumer safety. As it was extensively proven, Juul's marketing was targeting kids with not only misleading advertisements about safety claims, but also excessive promotions of bright colors and fun, happy, like Rainbow Land and all of their advertisements and ads, and using specific platforms that children also happen to use, whether that be TikTok or Instagram, specifically focusing on kids to build a new consumer base and to build addicts that they would have consistent people who are constantly buying from them. This is really bad. It even went so far that Juul was sending representatives to high schools around the country to not only hawk their products, but to talk about how they were safe, how they were better than smoking, even though smoking was not even a problem at this point, and just continually pushing forward false narratives for profits. This is disqualifying for a public company in the United States. When you know the risks of your product, when you know the harms, when you know that you are violating the law by marketing it to children, and then continue to do so, that is what encompasses the need for a ban. That is what encompasses the need for government regulatory action. Accepted?
What benefit do we derive from entirely banning all Juul products instead of just regulating their advertising policies?
First off, we punish when someone does a crime. We don't just give them slap on the wrists and tell them don't do it in the future, and we'll watch you really closely next time. Crimes have punishments. Crimes have consequences. First off, and we tell you that as this house, as the FDA, it is our job to fulfill the burden of the FDA. And if there's a corporation which has proven to obviously not have the public good at heart, even though it's very obvious that most corporations don't, they have their profit motive, at least some pretend to. With Juul, we know that they are putting their bottom line and their profit motive over literal children, forcing them with targeted ad campaigns. So even if we watch their advertisements in the future, there's no guarantee that they don't go under the table, because they've already been proven to be an unreliable actor. Now, with the impact of this is going to be public health, as less people starting to vape, less people are starting to Juul. This comes as a prereq for every other impact in the around, because we were all kids once. At the end of the day, if we all were like targeted when we were very young, gotten addicted, who knows what sort of cancer, what sort of lung problems, what sort of dangerous chemicals we could have inhaled our entire life. Who knows how that addiction could have affected the rest of our lives and changed the outcome. That is why we're telling you that addiction is going to be a prereq to every other impact in this round, because it basically just comes first. Our second contention is on monopoly, because Juul existed as monopoly within the reusable cart space, and the ban was justified in order to promote the free market, as other products were forced to compete to Juul's unique delivery system that dominated the entire market, and forced to make product that would be compatible with Juul's system, which is the definition of what a monopoly is. At their peak, they had control of 76% of the entire e-cigarette market, and getting rid of them opens up the market not only for for innovation, but for another company which has more like human interests at their core to take over and to become like a larger corporation rather than Juul, which we've seen is only for the profit motive and is only for their own fiduciary responsibility. Our third and final, the impact of this economic growth. Our third and final contention on consistent messaging. In the status quo, government organizations are losing credibility fast. This is really bad, as this uniquely harms these agencies' ability to do their job. If people don't listen to the CDC, if people don't listen to the FDA, then what's the point of having them in order to moderate public health? There isn't one. So backtracking and regretting an action only loses said agency more and more credibility and makes future recommendations and rulings less likely to be effective or followed. This is really important because when we're delegitimizing the institutions in this country, especially those that are made to keep people safe, there's two major impacts. The first is obviously the downsliding of public health. The second is the downsliding of democracy and faith in our system. First, on public health. On the downsliding of public health, it's obvious when people are not listening to the organizations that are there to keep them safe and regulate what they're inputting into their bodies and regulate what sort of like nutrients they're getting, etc., make sure they're not getting poisoned, then there's going to be less health when there's less like oversight on things that affect health. And then furthermore, in downsliding democracy, when there's less trust in institutions, suddenly that decreases the institutional value of having a nation itself. And thus this can compound over time, leading to less and less trust, less and less compassion, less and less patriotism, less and less nationalism. And at the end of the day, less and less cohesion as a nation, thus forcing it to fall apart. Thank you. For all these reasons, I urge an off ballot.
All right, just quick off time. My name is Tanya Shah. I am member of government, constructive, of course, and I will do their case, our case. All right, my time begins now. Hello, my name is Sonya Shah, and I will delve into their contentions first. So their first contention discusses consumer safety. They discuss how Juul has a very dangerous marketing situation here and how that marketing situation was banned, how Juul was sending representatives to schools. Now, we, as the government side, we regret that Juul started this marketing situation, but the issue with only banning Juul means that we did not ban other companies. Other companies undoubtedly followed, and Juul is only one of the factors of the situation. So we regret the fact that the FDA banned it because of the fact that all of these companies will have followed that marketing situation. All other companies are making disposables or are making, e-cigs that are going to be brightly colored and brightly flavored. And those are the companies also that are causing an issue in the nation. Now, I realize I have forgotten to discuss definitions, so I'm deeply sorry. I will delve into definitions first, actually. So in terms of definitions, they have, of course, challenger definitions. Now, regret, the word is reflexive. A citizen, however, may regret its government's inefficiency. And a citizen is very able to regret the fact that its government is not working right and that its government is not caring for it. And for that reason, we still defend our definition of this house as the American people, because the American people are the people who are at stake in this situation. They are the people who are affected by the FDA administration. And by defining this house as the FDA, we are narrowing the debate to an idea that the FDA is the only one at stake. And we are saying that the FDA is the only kind of group that matters here, whereas the American people matter more. And so as a result, we also defend our weighing mechanism. However, that is not to say that we cannot argue this on both sides. So that is what I will be doing to the best of my ability, depending on what the judge ends up preferring in the end. Now, delving back into the contentions of the opposing side. Now, their second contention discusses a monopoly. They say that we need to promote a free market, and taking Juul off the market is going to open up the market. Now, do we really want to open up an abusive market here? I think this entire contention is a little counterintuitive, given the idea that we should be closing the market that is incorrectly marketing things to students and kids, and closing the market that makes e-cigarettes a fun thing, and instead opening a market where it is the solution to smoking. As my teammate has stated, we need to separate what e-cigarettes for teens are doing with what e-cigarettes are intended to do. We should be keeping that market open and the other market closed. So this entire contention simply does not make sense, because allowing Juul to be banned so we can open up a market is extremely counterintuitive to any goal that either the FDA or the American people would be striving towards, which is reducing smoking and reducing teen vaping. Now, their third contention discusses that the government organizations are losing their credibility. Now, this is a gov contention. We regret the order because of what it has done to the looks of our government. We regret the order because it was the wrong order to make. And we regret the order because it is not actually solving the issues that we are trying to solve, which are teen vaping. I don't understand kind of the idea behind this contention, because we don't want government organizations to lose their credibility in terms of a public health issue. Yeah, we don't. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And on the government side, we need to understand that this order has actually lost the government's credibility here, and thus we regret that. Now I will delve into our contention. So our first contention is that e-cigarettes do have a net benefit. They do help quitters. Now they have explained that this is non-unique and how Juul has exposed it to a new audience. Now I would like to explain once again that Juul exposed it to the audience, but they are not the leaders of the new market kind of fear. There are other companies, there are other kind of groups of people who are continuing to expose to that audience. So yes, the Juul marketing is bad. It has also been mirrored in other companies that have not been banned. So in the FDA banning the Juul company marketing plan only, they're not actually addressing the whole issue. They're not addressing the issue of teen vaping, because there are so many other companies. There are so many other kind of products that teens are still using apart from Juul. It's not like we are cutting off access to e-cigarettes of teens. That is what the FDA is not doing, and that is what the FDA should have done. So thus we regret that. Our second contention discusses disposables and reusables. They say that we gave no warrant to disposable. Well, here's the warrant. Disposables are cheaper, and they are also easier to hide. Yes, you can take apart a reusable. There are still parts that people can find. A disposable can be thrown away. And while, for example, I don't know, reusables may have more flavors or something like that, disposables are cheaper. They are easier for kids to buy, and they're easier for kids to get rid of. So yes, a kid is more likely to use, I'll take it in a minute. A student is more likely to use a reusable to use a disposable versus a reusable, which, for example, a person who is going to use it multiple times to try and quit smoking may use. Yes.
How is a disposable cheaper than a reusable? When you're purchasing like a reusable, you're not buying the vaporizer anymore. You buy the vaporizer once, then constantly just buy more pods. When you're buying a disposable, you are rebuying the entire product every single time, making it more expensive.
I think we have to realize that as a teenager, I think having something that you can throw away that will cost less individually is going to be more valuable to you. And I think generally speaking, when you buy something that is disposable versus something that you can have forever, yeah, something you can have forever is going to cost a little bit more because it's going to last you a little bit longer. Disposable, you don't have as many things in this product that need to actually keep it. It's not long lasting. And if it's not long lasting, it is not going to cost as much. Does that make a little bit of sense? Okay, thank you. So now I will delve into our third contention. Now, our third contention is that this false impression of the teen vaping solution. Now, they've stated that no one thinks that Juuls have solved all the problem. I think banning Juuls would surely make a parent of a kid who is using e-cigarettes feel good. I'm sure banning Juuls is going to make that parent feel like their kid is safer. And the truth is that their kid is not safer because there are so many other companies that they could be buying from. There are so many other situations and issues that they will still be dealing with. So this parent will have a false idea of safety. So yeah, no one thinks that Juuls have solved all of the problems of smoking, and that banning it isn't changing the idea, but having this mindset is still going to cause harm. And under either way mechanism, whether it's utilitarianism or it's doing the job of the FDA, the parent is going to feel that the FDA is doing their job when they're not actually, and the parent is going to feel that the kid is safe when they are actually not. So in either case, it is a net harm and it is bad for the FDA. So now I will kind of delve into and reconstruct some of our contentions with my remaining minute. So our first contention discusses that e-cigarettes do help individuals quit smoking. Now, I think the main idea of this contention really is that there is a net benefit to e-cigarettes. E-cigarettes, of course, they are not the best thing in the world. That's pretty simple as it is. However, they are a solution to smoking and to smoking addiction. So they do create enough benefit. They are something that is trying to do good. And the idea of the e-cigarette individually is something that is going to have this benefit for smokers who are trying to quit. It is a solution in that sense, and that is the main essence of the idea of a vape. Now, our second contention really discusses that. Honestly, I believe I've gone into this very well, but it discusses this kind of cross between disposables and reusables. And disposables were not the ones that were banned. Reusables were. So we weren't actually addressing the issue. This ties into my third contention, which is the false idea that we did address the issue, and kind of creating this idea that the issue is now going to be solved and that we are taking steps to solve the solution when we really are not is more harmful. And under the Wang mechanism, that is something we regret. Thank you. Vote Gov.
All right. Hi, I'm George Votis. I'm second speaker. I'm from Trinity. Let me pull up what I need to, and my time will start now. So on definitions, primarily we disagree with the government, as the FDA exists as a separate entity underneath the USFG and is not U.S. federal government, it doesn't matter, and is not federally influenced by the American influenced by the American people, and thus must be the FDA. However, we will consider both sides for Wang, because regret of the American people in some cases can also be the regret of the FDA. We can do both. So first of all, our opponents argued that Juul marketing is mirrored by other companies, and many other companies won, and those companies tend to be disposable e-cigarette companies. Now, just because other companies do bad things, it doesn't justify Juul doing those bad things, and just doesn't justify not punishing them. We're not arguing that the e-cigarettes are all like disposables are okay, but reusables aren't. We're arguing that Juul literally came to high schools, literally marketed to students and to teens, and we do not regret banning it because the company should be punished for those actions. We completely agree that other cigarettes are bad. Our opponent's second contention, which I will now deal with, is that disposables aren't banned, reusables are banned. Now, it's the same point here. Juul was bad though. Kids may prefer other things, which, as we argued, may lean towards reusables, and as you guys argued, may lean towards disposables, but that doesn't excuse Juul once again. The two aren't mutually exclusive. One bad does not equal the other bad. They both can exist at the same time, and thus Juul, as a company which falsely led and was marketing to teens, should be punished for that. Second, our opponent's third contention was that they think that the banning of Juuls makes parents think that kids are safer, but that's not the case. Kids are not safe, but parents think that is the case, right? I believe you guys argued that your third contention was that banning Juul makes people think that they have solved the problem of teen smoking. Now, we strongly disagree with this, because let's begin. Parents, first of all, always will be heavily worried about their kids. It doesn't matter about what. I promise you that most parents could be worried about drugs that are not even in the town that they live in, and yet they will always be concerned about their kids. Banning Juul is literally just the first step. Sorry?
POI. So are you saying that the parent of an addicted child is going to be wearing the same amount, or is going to be weighed in the same amount as just a random parent who is worried about a regular child?
Could you repeat the COI? I didn't hear you. POI, excuse me.
Are you saying that a parent who is the parent of an addicted child is going to have the same level of worry, and that worry should be weighed the same as another parent of a more regular non-addicted student?
Look, obviously different parents are going to argue or are going to worry differently about their kids. I'm saying that parents worry about their kids inherently about things that could be the case, right? I'm not necessarily equating an addicted child's parents to a non-addicted child's parents. I'm saying both parents tend to worry about their child. That tends to be the trend of things. But what I am saying, though, is that banning Juul is just the first step. While parents are worried, banning Juul does in reality make it safer for kids on the street, right? They're not likely going to, because these e-cigs aren't going to be as prolific, right? And because, with Juul, you have to buy it once. With others, you have to buy them multiple times, which is difficult for kids, right? Because of that, kids are going to, obviously, banning Juul will help the process of getting rid of kid addiction to e-cigarettes, right? And Juul did market to these students. Now, I will now go to our contentions and how you guys argued against them and strengthen those. Starting with our first, right? The opposition argued that they regret that Juul negatively affects kids, but affirms the definition that the house is the American people, right? We once again disagree with that, as we said, but we will argue both, even if it is the American people. Obviously, everyone regrets that Juul negatively affects the kids, but people are regretting the ban placed by someone else, i.e. the ban placed by the FDA. The FDA has to be the one regretting that. But banning Juul doesn't stop us from banning other companies in the future. We're not saying, as I said earlier, that some cigarettes are okay and others are not. We're saying that this is the first step. This is the beginning, and it's because of Juul's bad actions that these things should start to be banned. However, with heavy regulations, it's not, we agree with you guys that it is okay for smokers, that Juul can be beneficial to them. If one company pushed forward a new mindset of advertising at kids and another company followed, would you not want to punish the first company, right? I mean, that's what you guys are arguing. Our opponents concede that the impact prerequisites everything else. If we win, consumer goes up and we win this round. Now, going on to our second contention, just to quote the opposition, do we want to open up the market to more of these things when originally you guys said that it is a healthy and beneficial market to people who need it, right? About our monopoly concept. We should keep the market to just Juuling for helping people, right? We agree with that. We don't necessarily disagree with the fact that it can help people, and so we drop this contention. Now, for the third contention, our opponents said that we regret the order because it was the wrong order to make. They conceded that Juul had bad marketing practices. Thus, that means this order was correct to punish them. If someone does something wrong and goes after kids and advertises to kids in hopes that their profit motives, that they're in for-profit motives, that their profits may increase, that is a bad thing, which you guys conceded to. You guys regret that. Now, we are saying because you guys conceded that it had bad marketing practices, that means that this order is correct in punishing them. Thus, because of those reasons, because we have fortified our argument and suggested that, you know, the entire argument of disposable e-cigarettes doesn't necessarily mean, or doesn't mean at all, that Juul should not be banned, we believe Judge strongly vote for our team.
Okay, so if everyone is still ready, I'll go into LOR. The order is going to go their case, our case. Time will start now. Let us open up with realizing that the burdens in this round are going to be what it's going to come down to, which is this House regrets the Food and Drug Administration to ban Juul products. Let's look at it at both definitions of this House, whether it's the FDA or the American people, whether it's utilitarianism or just doing the job of the FDA. Let's look at the first one. Let's look at utilitarianism in the American people. If this House, the American people, what the government needs to prove is that there are tangible harms to the majority of the American people from banning specifically Juul, that leads for the decision to be regretted. Now, with that in mind, let's look at their contentions to see if they prove that. On their first contention, they said that e-cigs help people stop smoking. In order to gain access to their own burden from this contention, they would need to prove to you that by banning Juul, you are cutting off the vast majority of people from getting their e-cigarettes and being able to quit smoking. Do they prove this to you? No. They do not tell you how much of the market share right now Juul has. They don't tell you how many smokers need Juul to quit, and they don't tell you how many of these smokers will have to switch to alternative brands or will not be able to switch to alternative brands because of the ban. Without this contention gives you no impact. On their second contention about not addressing the primary proponent of teen vaping, that is not a reason to regret the ban if you agree that the ban was because of bad practices and thus was justified. Without this proof, there's no solvency in here. Okay, this doesn't address the primary problem of teen vaping, but that doesn't mean that the ban was bad or that the ban was not justified. They don't give you the warranting there as to how this actually hurt something. And because of that, they don't win on util. On their C3, they said that it makes people think that they've solved the problem of teen smoking. They bring up this thing about like caring about like an addict's parents versus caring about like a child who's not addicted's parents. But at the end of the day, not solving the problem of teen smoking is again, not a harm and not a reason to regret the ban on Juul products. They have no offense on their case. Let's look over the second like framework about like looking at it through the FDA. Again, unless they prove that like e-cigs helping people stop, unless they prove that access goes down to e-cigs, there's no offense on their first contention. Unless they prove that there's no benefit at all, even though we told you that kids were using vapes and that they were actively marketing, which means that there was a benefit to banning it. So that throws out the C2. And on the C3, they have no impact on either side unless they can pull out a utilitarianism or parents should care about what the FDA should care about what parents think over over the actual safety of kids. Until they pull that out because they didn't give you any warranty in the entire round, there's no impact there. Now, let's look at our case and see why you actually can vote for us. Remember, as George tells you, I told you when I read our first contention that children becoming addicted is a prerequisite for every other impact in the entire round because of the value of human life and the power of youth. Because if you get addicted and start juuling or using e-cigarettes at a young age, this could ruin your entire life. This goes unresponded to. They don't even respond to the fact that this prereqs other impacts. So let's extend this. If we win at all that consumer safety goes up because of the ban, then the round is up. So let's look at our first contention. We tell you that it is extensively proven that Juul's marketing was targeting children with misleading advertisements, including both safety claims and their color patterns and their general marketing techniques. Because of this, we tell you that child usage empirically went up, and thus Juul had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars, admitting guilt and admitting that the problem was their fault, thus showing off how consumer safety goes up when Juul is not able to sell their products. This prereqs other impacts, and the round ends here. Their only response is that they regret that Juul negatively affects kids, but they also regret the ban. But they didn't tell you how the ban is bad in any way, shape, or form. They don't tell you why there's not other brands. They don't tell you why Juul deserves to get off scot-free. And until they tell you that, there's no reason to vote Gov. Now, let's look at our third and final contention about consistent messaging. They said that this is a Gov contention because we need to have consistent messaging on this, but they ignore the entire backtracking link where it's the backtracking is what makes inconsistent messaging and makes this an opt contention in the first place. And then furthermore, they just said it was the wrong order to make, but if they agree that Juul has bad marketing practices, that makes this the right order. Thank you. For all these reasons, you must vote up.
Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, my time starts now. Hello again, I'm Tanya Shah, and in this rebuttal speech, I will first begin by going through all of the contentions and how this really has to tie it back into the motion, and with the time that I have left, I will weigh the worlds. Now, first of all, what we need to establish here is what each side is arguing, especially in when considering the motion at hand, and which that is regret. Now, what we as the government side have to prove is how or why we regret this the Juul ban. And then what we have shown in this debate is the reason why we regret this Juul ban is because we did not adequately solve the issue at hand. We did not do the best that we could have done, and we did not create a policy that would have attacked the issue the most that we could have done in that opportunity that we had in the past. Now, that is the fundamental reason why we are regretting this decision. Arguing whether or not Juul is good, arguing whether or not these advertising policies are good or bad, does not come or simply connect to the idea that the reason why we regretted our actions in the past was because we did not solve the issue as adequately as we could have. Now, going through the contentions, if we go through our first contention, which talks about how the vaping products as a whole helped quit smoking. Now, one of the reasons why we've regretted the issue at hand is because we understood the distinction between addressing the issue of teen vaping and addressing the issue of vaping. And when we realized that if we focus solely on teen vaping, we don't understand the whole realm of vaping as a separate, unique body, a separate idea, and how if in doing so, we overlook the benefits that can come with vaping, there is a direct detriment at hand. And we've proven to you that this is a disadvantage. And although our opponents claim that this was a non-unique argument, we need to understand that going forward with my opponents saying what my opponents has stated and what my opponents wanted would have resulted in this detriment, would have resulted in individuals who wanted to quit smoking who do no longer have access to Juuls that could have helped them quit smoking. And tying back into the Wang mechanism, which we had debated over, which was about utilitarianism, our opponents criticized our Wang mechanism and how our points really tied back to our Wang mechanism for the main reason that they said with utilitarianism, you have to prove whatever benefits the majority of the Americans. But what we need to show, actually, with utilitarianism, what we need to show is what benefits the most people possible in this scenario. And in this scenario, the people who we are debating about are the ones who would have benefited from these vaping products. We don't care about everyone as a whole. We care about who we can benefit at hand. And the people who we can benefit right now are those who would have derived benefit from these vaping products. Now, going to our other contentions, our second contention, which talked about how it did not address the grander issue of teenage vaping, and as well with our third contention about how it gives a false impression. What we need to understand here is that the idea of disposable versus reusable vaping, there is actually a consideration that must be made here. And although my opponents tried to dismiss the whole disposable versus reusable vaping idea and how that they claimed it was not relevant to this debate, it is in fact relevant, because when we understand, when we comprehend how the disposable versus reusable idea about vaping comes to hand in this debate, we understand that what we did, what our actions, what the FDA dictated over vaping as a whole, we understand how it did not actually solve the issue at hand. How when we were given the opportunity to address the problem of teenage vaping, we did not do what we could have done. We did not solve the issue when the real issue at hand had to do with disposable vaping cigarettes. And when we understand this consideration, we start to understand how what this debate really does come down to is about how we can best solve that vaping problem and how we did not. And that is the real reason why we are regretting this decision. And going to my opponent's contentions, their first contention, which did clash with our first contention about how the advertising techniques and how Juul does target kids and how that's bad and all, what we need to understand is the reason why we are regretting the action that we made against these companies is because even though we only penalize Juul, the real issue with this is we could have penalized a lot of other companies. We could have penalized the entire industry as a whole, but we penalized only Juul. And that is the reason why we regretted it, because we did not solve the entire issue. We did not do everything that we could have done. And even if we made progress, we did not make all the progress that could have been made. And with my opponent's second contention, we have refuted that, talking about how it would open up a market. And what we really meant there, and my opponent tried to refute it, saying it was just a contradiction. What we meant there is that in simply dismissing it and saying how it would promote free market and all of that, well, the risk that we run is that we could create an entire industry of other companies who, like Juul, use bad advertising policies. That is what we intended, and as a result, that contention does not stand. Thank you.
Good round, guys.
Good round.
Good job, everybody. Do you want a disclosure?
Yes, please.